sounds from the rhythm underground. Welcome to the We Love Guitar Nerds podcast, your place for all things guitar. We have your interviews, we have your lessons, your boomer discussions, and your verbal rabble-rousings. So please hit subscribe, share, and like to join our constantly growing musical community. Welcome to the We Love Guitar Nerds podcast. I'm Rod Gels, your host, and today we have Mark Chatfield, native of Columbus, Ohio. You may have heard of Mark Chatfield, a rock and roll machine called the Godz, G-O-D-S, or Z.
Z.
That was Z, yes. And, or you might have heard of him from Rosie. Or there's this guy up north named Bob Seger that had a Silver Bullet band. We got lots to talk about. First of all, thank you, Mark. This is an honor. Where did all this start from you? Your musical journey, where did it begin?
That's actually a pretty easy question. It began when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, I think I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And at that point in time, I decided what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I didn't get a guitar until I was around 12.
Okay.
But I would pick up anything and everything that looked like one.
All right.
Brooms. My grandparents had a pool table, so pool cues.
Mm-hmm.
Anything tennis like rackets. That to pretend I was playing guitar.
Tennis rackets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Snow shovel.
Yeah.
But then I finally got a guitar when I was 12 years old, and it was a Sears Silvertone out of the Sears catalog.
Mm-hmm.
One of those like just F-hole acoustic guitars. And I kind of started teaching myself to play guitar after that.
Was that like 1968 is what we're saying?
Right about there, probably about 1968.
How does one teach themselves in 1968?
That's a good question. This is funny because I remember doing it. I'd carry the guitar everywhere that day I got it. So, of course I carried it into the John with me. And I don't even know how it got tuned, but it must have been tuned because I sat there and I was strumming on the strings, and all of a sudden I started strumming the E and the B string, and I started playing Happy Together by the Turtles. That's the first thing I actually really played on guitar. And I just taught it myself, to myself like that. There was actually a kid that lived down the street from me in Grove City. His name was Greg Rogers. He had a guitar and he knew how to play some. So he would teach me some chords here and there. Okay.
So he was kind of your first mentor?
Kinda, yeah, kinda.
Knowing kids in the neighborhood.
He was not real happy about teaching me chords, but he did.
Okay.
And then my mom bought me she bought me the Beatles complete music book.
Okay.
So that had to be 68, early 69. The problem with that is, and I didn't realize it till many years later, those are written for piano.
I know. I knew what you were going to say.
Yeah. So I'm playing everything like in flats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm trying to tell people I know how to play these songs. They're going, no, that's not how it is. You're not supposed to be playing an E flat, a D flat, and blah, blah, blah. So it was challenging.
Yeah.
And basically I would just pick it up from anybody I knew how to play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, teach me this, teach me that. And once I learned a few chords, I'd just go woodshed in my bedroom, listening to records, and try to pick things up.
All right.
My mom is very musical. She plays piano. My sister plays piano also. They're both really good piano players. So I guess it runs in my family a little bit. So, I've always been able to kind of play by ear.
Yes, I was going to say, so having a good ear certainly didn't hurt. Absolutely though. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So how long was it before you started playing with other people?
When I had that guitar, I actually, Greg, the guy down the street, that played, we had a drummer around the corner, our paper boy named Ernie Coachman. and then another guy named Jeff Snyder that had a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg Rogers actually had an electric guitar. The rest of us just had acoustic guitars.
Mm-hmm.
And we put together a band in Ernie's basement where we used to practice. And that band was called the Bottled Snowstorm.
Bottled Snowstorm.
Yeah, we never played anywhere but the basement.
Yeah, well, yeah. Most of my bands.
And I can't imagine how horrible we probably were, but we had fun, you know.
Yeah.
And you could go back and 6th and 7th grade and tell people, yeah, man, I'm in a band. And we did play the talent show, I guess. Somebody reminded me of that. We played the 6th grade talent show, and we played Little Black Egg or something, and we actually won. So
yeah, I don't know the Little Black Egg. Which
it was a real, when I was a kid, that was the first song you really learned. It was by a band called the Nightcrawlers.
Okay.
And it has a really defined lick. It goes okay. Just A, E, and D.
Okay.
And it's a super easy song to learn, and everybody played it. So yeah, when we get done with this, Google Little Black Egg.
It's already written down.
Yeah, that was the song du jour when I was a kid.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, so Bottled Snowstorm. What other covers would you guys checking out?
Oh gosh, I think we probably played stuff like Louie Louie. I know that we, I know we had some other kid come over one time. His name was Don Hill. His brother John played guitar, and the rumor around school was his brother knew how to play Purple Haze.
All right.
So we had him come over to try to teach us how to play Purple Haze, but he really didn't know how to play it either. And we were biting off way more than we could chew at that point in time. And I think we might have, rumbled around with Born to Be Wild, probably, because if you play that wrong, it's pretty easy to play down in the first E position. So it was anything we could play that
with the A and D
in it. I knew how to play bar chords at that point in time.
Okay. Anything with the A and D in it.
Pretty much, maybe a C here and there.
Okay.
When I was first starting to learn to play guitar, I had a bitch of a time with a D chord for some reason. I could not get my ring finger to play the D chord, so I would play it with just the E and the B string, and and kind of mute the rest of the strings.
All right.
I used to. It just seemed like it took me forever to get that chord down. I don't know why.
Mine was
probably still have problems with it. I don't know.
Mine was C and F. F was also horrible.
Yeah.
So so how long was it before you Bottled Snowstorm? You had other like Painless Expression.
Yeah, the Bottled Snowstorm. Everybody kind of went off and did their own stuff. Like I said, it was
after
just
the talent show
basement. And what happens is, when you're in Grove City's kind of a small town. So it's
that's
not
where
so small
that's
anymore.
Where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from Grove City, Ohio.
Okay.
And it's kind of a small town. Like I said, it's not so small anymore. But, when you're in the grade school or junior high school, word gets out, who plays instruments and things like that. It's super, easy to find other people. So word got out that I played guitar. So right around 7th grade, which is the beginning of junior high school, I ran into some guys there, a guy named C.R. Quinn, who was a drummer. And then I think the other guitar player was Danny Barr, and then a guy named Jim Sammons. I can't remember. I believe I remember these names.
That's
all these years ago. And we kind of started getting together. CR actually had a really nice Ludwig drum set. And Jim had an electric guitar. Danny had electric guitar, and I still had my acoustic guitar, but I was actually the singer in that band.
Okay. So when did you sing before you played guitar?
Yeah, I guess.
Because everybody does, right?
Yeah, I was, of course, when I still went to church, I was in the church choir.
Okay.
But
you sang along with the radio, and you did all like what everybody does.
Exactly. I can remember going over to my old elementary school during the summer, and they had this awesome swing set back there that they'd never put up in a school anymore, because you could.
Because
it was chains and rubber, and we'd go way up in the air, and we'd jump out into the gravel, like like they wouldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can remember going over there and just singing Beatles. I'd be the only person on the playground. I'd be singing Beatles songs at the top of my lungs on that swing set.
So that was the Beatles were kind of your first, your gateway band.
Yeah, at that point in time, I was far more a Beatles fan than a Rolling Stones fan.
Okay.
I can't say I'm that way now. It's kind of 50-50.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Which
I
is
was
not much.
addicted.
I'm that way too, but there's not much. There are not many people like us.
Yeah, yeah.
That's usually a polarizing.
Yeah, I can go, man.
Your
I can
Beatles
go
or your
either
Stones.
way,
Yeah.
on any given day. And I think if you put songs side by side, I might like more Rolling Stone songs than I like Beatles songs.
Mhm.
But I mean, part of it's because my musical direction kind of went more Stones-ish than the Beatles-ish, and probably for no other reason than it was a lot easier to play than the real produced Beatles stuff.
Right, right.
So, but I was addicted to anything music. I would watch all of the hullabaloo shows that were on TV, Shindig. I mean, I would not miss an episode of any of that stuff. And then during the summer, instead of being out playing at noon, I'd rush home and watch Where the Action Is.
Okay.
Which was Dick Clark's show. I think it was on ABC, and that's where that's where Paul Revere and the Raiders got their start. They were like the house band on Where the Action Is.
Okay.
And then they'd have other bands, but anything to do with music.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start? When did you start cresting over the beginner-ish, garagey 3-chord stuff to like this guy can play?
That was kind of the band I was describing with Danny Barr and Jim Sammons and CR. CR kind of lost interest in playing drums. Jim kind of lost interest in playing guitar. And Danny had hooked up with a couple of other guys, a guy named Steve Schaefer and a guy named Doug DeWeese.
Okay.
And they ended up calling me. And then I went back to starting to play guitar again at that point. And that was the beginning of the Painless Expression.
Okay.
So we rehearsed in Doug DeWeese's basement. At that point in time, I'd finally gotten my first electric guitar, which was a K Speed Demon, single pickup red K Speed Demon that I still have.
All right.
And a Vox, or I wish I would have had a Vox amp. I had a Silvertone Twin 12 amplifier that I sold a shotgun that I inherited from my grandfather, and I sold the shotgun to buy that amplifier.
All right.
And the guitar, I actually mowed lawns all summer long to pay for half of the guitar.
All right.
That was the deal with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So we started practicing, and I still think we probably were terrible, but we were learning all kinds of other songs anything that was on the radio at that point. What comes to mind, like trying to do Let It Be without a piano.
Yeah.
He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, that kind of stuff. Well, we actually ended up, our dads were kind of our managers and road crew because none of us could drive. We're all like 12, 13 years old. And we got hooked up, and I can't tell you how, but we got hooked up with a DJ named Dave Logan from the AM radio station. Well, actually, then there was only AM radio stations in Columbus, and he did these sock hops. Like at Lockbourne Air Base, you'd play there. You'd play at Cook Recreation Center, all the recreation centers, swimming pools, and stuff like that. So we got hooked up with him, and we got these. Steve's dad worked in the men's department at a big department store called Lazar's here.
Okay.
And got us all matching suits. So we had all these matching suits, and we were actually working every week.
Wow.
I'm playing 2 nights, making $50-$60 at 12 years old.
This is 1969,
1970, and
1970. And in many places in the United States, the wage did not go up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They make less now.
2022 wages are better.
So, that kind of happened. I remember we got sponsored the second summer. We got sponsored by Coca-Cola, and we had to wear white shirts with these Coca-Cola bell bottoms.
All right.
Had Coke logos all over them. I wish I still had those. I don't.
Yeah.
But I do have a picture of the Painless Expression with us all with all our suits on and stuff.
Okay. You got to share that.
I don't even know where it is, but I have pictures. I think I have a
Yeah.
copy of them on my
Yeah.
Facebook page or something. But anyway, that band went on for about a year and a half, I think, something
Mhm.
like that. And, I'm 13 and, everything in my mind and body and everything is starting to change. And I'm kind of a defiant, not as bad as I was, but I was kind of a defiant rebel kind of a kid.
All right.
And those guys were all pretty conservative. And so we all had kind of, we all had bangs and stuff, but I started letting my hair grow longer.
Hmm.
And
How did
my
that go
musical,
over?
huh?
How did that go over with your parents? And
My dad hated it, especially, I played football during that time. I was still kind of between being a musician and a jock.
Mhm.
Because my dad's kind of a jock, and I played basketball and I played football, little league football, and all
Mhm.
that stuff like that. But when I started growing my hair long, he wasn't liking that. And I can remember after a football game, him marching me to the barber shop because I had the longest hair on the football team, and it embarrassed him.
Mhm.
I was like covering my ears. But then after that, they kind of just gave up on it, and I started growing it long. The big argument happened at Steve Schaefer's house at a practice when those guys wanted to learn. Do you remember a song called Hitchin' a Ride? It's kind of bubble gummy. You
Okay.
look that one up too.
Okay.
It's called Hitchin' a
I
Ride.
know Hitching a Ride, but it ain't the same one.
I can't remember who it was by.
Okay. They wanted to do it.
Yeah, they wanted to do that, and I wanted to learn Mississippi Queen.
Okay. Well, that was your was that your for your love?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was your line in the sand.
It was, and a big argument ensued over the length of my hair and the direction. I mean, these guys are all listening, to all this, the radio stuff.
Yeah.
By that point in time, I was listening to, I had Are You Experienced? I had the first Led Zeppelin album. I had the
Mhm.
second Led Zeppelin album. I
Yeah.
had Blind Faith. I was way ahead of them. Well,
Mhm.
I just went a different musical direction
Yeah,
than they
yeah. You
did.
weren't just bubblegum. You were
No, I was getting far more progressive than they were. So me and one of the fathers, actually Steve Schaefer's dad, kind of had it out, and I'm standing there and I'm 13 years old, and I looked at him, I said, well, fuck you then. And they fired me.
okay.
So I hope you have to bleep that. Am I allowed to say?
You're allowed to curse.
Okay, cool. So I got fired
Yeah.
from that band. So I went home, told my parents I got fired, and it just was the way it was.
Yeah.
The next week, we're in junior high school, and there was another band in junior high school called the Purple Dome.
Okay.
But it's Purpill. Ooh,
Okay.
psychedelic.
All right.
So they knew about me because my band, the Painless Expression, had actually played at the school a couple of times.
Mhm.
We used to play in the commons area in the morning before school, and because everybody thought it was so neat that we had a band and we all dressed the same and blah 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 blah. So this guy named Dave Girth called me and said, hey, you want to come join our band? Because they were like the bad boys.
Mhm.
And so I went over to Dave Girth's basement and practiced with him, and I joined the band. And they were doing Steppenwolf and Creedence Clearwater, and we were toying with Black Sabbath and
Mhm.
all the stuff that I just loved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was the beginning of that was the beginning of Rebel Mark.
All right. All right. So what happens to the Painless Expression once Rebel Mark is ousted?
That's kind of a funny story. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Steve Schaefer's dad, who says, because I was actually in the Painless Expression, I did most of the singing and I played rhythm guitar. Danny
Okay.
Barr was the lead guitarist in the band, even though we argued about solos sometimes. We did Hey Joe, bad version of Hey Joe by the Hendrix version.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to do the solo, and he wanted to do the solo, and we would argue about it. But Steve Schaefer's dad called me back and said, hey, how would you like to come back to the band and play lead? And I guess once I was gone, they figured out that Danny Barr really couldn't play guitar very well.
Because
And
you were holding
Danny,
down
if
the
you see
fort.
this, I'm sorry. So
You were holding down the fort.
pretty much, yeah. And I don't think it's good he couldn't play lead very well. I think it's because he couldn't play rhythm and carry the band, and I kind of could.
Yeah.
So he quit, and they wanted me to come back, and I just said no. Said I'm happy where I am.
Mhm.
So that was, they got some. They had some guy come in to replace me, and they stayed around, I don't know, for not very much longer.
Yeah.
And then that was the end of them. So then the Purple Dome went through a lot of different a lot of different members over the time, that we were in early high school, and played the dance here and there and stuff like that, and mostly just practiced in Dave Girth's basement.
Mm-hmm.
So his mom was divorced, and we kind of so she's a single mom raising two teenage boys.
Oh boy.
And that was kind of the hang. We kind of
Okay.
ran the house, if you know.
Okay.
Got away with
This
everything.
is, you're around 13 years old, 12, 13?
13, 14, probably early into 15
Okay.
in that band. And then we started getting, way heavier. We were doing like the live side, or the My Generation side of Live at Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing Black Sabbath, and I'm still a huge Black Sabbath fan to this day. And Steppenwolf, and anything that was, not super radio friendly.
Yeah.
We were already picking the alternative tracks from the Creedence Clearwater records instead of doing,
instead of
we do Susie Q for 20 minutes instead of doing Proud Mary.
And that's
that kind of thing.
So in this Purple Dome, is this where are you starting to work more on the lead guitar stuff?
Yes. That band originally had a lead guitar player who left the band because he was on the high school football team and just didn't have time, and he wasn't into it anymore. And so I became the lead guitarist, because we became a 3-piece with a singer at that point in time.
Okay.
I played
the singer in this one?
Huh?
Were you the singer in this one?
No, we had a singer named Greg Patterson.
Okay.
Who ended up leaving the band eventually. And then, yes, I became the singer. It was just Dave Girth, myself, and various drummers.
So how quickly, so once you started working on your lead guitar stuff, how quickly does this start to shape up?
Pretty quickly, because I'd always kind of worked on it.
Okay.
I
just kind of like being thrown into it. You need that in order to.
Yeah. And when I was learning stuff in my bedroom, I was having a lot more fun playing the lead parts than I was, the rhythm guitar parts. And those were back in the days. I used to listen to the Woodstock album religiously, because there's so much great stuff on there. Between, my goal was to learn I'm Going Home. The Alvin Lee thing.
Yep.
And the Who on there. And then when 2 came out, Mountain was on there. So I listened to that stuff all the time. Same with
your early influences, like Leslie West.
Oh yeah, big time.
Leslie West.
Leslie West is a huge influence on me. So is Pete Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
Mick Ralphs. I mean, the list can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
The guy, what's his name from Trapeze? Oh shoot, I can't think of his name. I'm sorry.
Tommy Bolin. Was he in Trapeze?
No. Gosh, I'll think of his name here. I keep thinking Lee Pickens, but no, he was in Blood Rock. I'll think of it anyway. So it's back when you had a record player that would, had 3 speeds on it, 6 or 4 speeds, 16, 33, 45, and 78.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd put your record player on 16 and slow the solos down to half speed. And then, of course, scratch it back to relearn it, because you just have to keep playing it over and over. So, of course, I ruined all my early records.
Yep.
But that's kind of the way you did it. And then I'd go watch people and just learn what I could from whoever I could. I didn't take lessons, and other than saying, hey, show me how to do this. And to this day I regret it. Okay. I really wish I would have.
What access did you have to people, like in 1969 and 70, 51?
There were a couple of really good guitar players in my school.
Okay.
A guy named like Steve Breckenridge, who I didn't really bond with too much, but there was another guy named Rich Hill
Okay.
who would come down and jam with us sometimes. And
Mhm.
I would actually learn a lot from him.
Yeah.
And then, and I probably learned as much from watching guys play on television, that
Mhm.
than I did from being in person with people
Yeah. Yeah.
until later on.
Yeah. Okay. So, when like guitar teachers back, well, I'm thinking early '70s, a lot of them were really conservative.
They were conservative and regimented. They wanted you to learn scales and
Yeah.
things like that. And
Did you ever go through that?
no, no, we really didn't have a teacher in Grove City
Okay.
too much. And once again, I was even, while in high school, I was even in the stage/jazz band. I played guitar in a
Okay.
stage band. I couldn't read any of those chords.
Yeah.
I faked my way through it for 3 years.
Mhm.
I would play, if it said, C major seventh or something, I'd just play the root chord.
See.
I just play the C and kind of fake my way through it.
Mhm.
We were though lucky that we had a pretty progressive
Band director.
band director there, and our stage band, which actually won a lot of awards, we were doing oh gosh, we did 40,000 Headman by Traffic.
Okay.
And then he brought in Peaches on Regalia, which is a Frank
Frank
Zappa
Zappa.
song.
Yeah. Yep.
And he was amazed that I already knew how to play it, because the Mother's Live at the Fillmore 1970 is one of my favorite albums still
Mhm.
to this day.
Yeah.
And Peaches on Regalia is on that album.
Yeah.
And I had learned it from that record, and he was like blown away that I already knew
Yeah.
how to play the song. Of course, for the band, we did it in a different key because there were horns involved. But
No marimbas.
yeah, he was pretty progressive with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you had no marimba in your band. I'm guessing.
Had what?
You had
No
no marimba.
marimba?
Yeah.
No, did not. Did not.
Or bells or whatever. Zappa's big on the percussion on that.
Yeah, oh, big time, big time.
So this Purple Dome, does that become E Pluribus Unum?
Yeah, that was the same band. We just changed the name.
Okay.
And actually, my mom thought of that name.
That's wonderful.
And we had I have somewhere, somebody gave me decades ago an E Pluribus Unum business card. And we had business cards because we had kind of this fake manager guy. And we never really, we played, like I said, we played at some school functions for my school and maybe one of the other high schools in the area. And then we played in a couple of Battle of the Bands that we'd always end up coming in like second, because there'd be some band there whose parents bought them, Vox amps and Rickenbackers and Gibsons. And, we had a bunch of stuff we threw together.
Cool kids, yeah.
Yeah.
That still happens.
Oh yeah. I mean,
the rich kid families.
There's a Facebook page for like, it's called Central Ohio Scrapbook or something.
Yeah.
And they show all these bands from the 60s, and all these kids have Vox Super Beatles and Roland Fleet Customs.
I always root for the ones that aren't that way.
Yeah. Well, we were the Grove City poor kids.
Yeah, that's who I root for.
Yep.
To this day, because that's the thing. That's the thing, is like, the rich kids are always they're always winning it because they have social pull, but they don't have the talent nor the,
No, some of them could play, but they looked way better.
Yeah.
They presented better. They weren't out there in a tank top and torn up jeans, which we were.
Yeah.
And we all needed a haircut.
Okay.
With probably flagrant acne.
So so your teenage years, you're going from band to band about a year and a half for each band.
Yeah. It seems like it was forever, but most of them were only about that long. And that band dissolved for several reasons. I had met my girlfriend at the time. She and the drummer's cousin, who went to a different high school, came down to see us practice. That was always the thing, you'd invite people to come down and watch you practice.
Of course.
And we'd have our stolen floodlight light show going, with some some, gel paper in front of them and blah, blah, blah. But I met her when she came down there, and she was from a different high school, not too far from mine. But so I ended up meeting a bunch of people from a school called Franklin Heights. Well, also during that time is when I just really started discovering drugs. And so I was either, I all during high school, I was on LSD. I mean, I tripped my brains out from about 10th grade on.
Mhm.
And the other guys in the band kind of weren't digging the fact that I was doing that. So
You were, that was a bad boy band, but it wasn't a bad boy band.
no, Dave, the bass player, he was kind of straight arrow as far as that went. He would drink, but the drugs thing was kind of not his thing.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how it dissolved, but it kind of did. They started actually, that guy I told you, Rich Hill, kind of replaced me in that band.
Okay.
And then I met a guy through my girlfriend at the time named Tom Fritz, who was a bass player
Okay.
on the west side of Columbus. And he was a couple of years older than me. So he had a car, he had a job, he had graduated from high school. And he came over to my house once, and we started playing guitar a little bit. And after that, he would come after he'd get off work. He was a barber of all things.
Yeah.
After he would get off work, he would drive to my house and pick me up, and we go to his house on the west side, and we would sit down and we would listen. That guy turned me on to so much music that I was not aware of at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I got into trapeze.
Okay.
He was really into 3-piece bands.
The trapeze. Tell us who trapeze is for those who do. Glenn, I know Glenn Hughes is a part of it.
Glenn Hughes and the guy that ended up being the drummer in Judas Priest was the drummer.
Okay.
And for the life of me, I cannot think of the guitar player's name. And he passed away not too long ago. He's a really good guitar player. And he actually co-wrote and played on the White Snake album that has Still of the Night on it.
Okay.
Gosh, I brain dead with that, but I'll think of it. So yeah, trapeze. I mean, anybody out there listening, go get the Trapeze Medusa album.
Mel Galley.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Trapeze Medusa album and the You Are the Music, We're Just the Band. 2 great records.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, they're so good. Early ZZ Top. He had the first ZZ Top album.
Okay.
Slade. He turned me on to Slade. I had no idea who they were at that point. David Bowie, early David Bowie. Band called, remember we were doing some songs by a band called Sir Lord Baltimore. Then early Jay Giles, like the Full House, really.
They were their early stuff. People don't know.
And so we would go to his house and we would just woodshed and learn this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the band that became Zarkwiff.
Okay.
And that is a name that means absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We had a drummer for a while named Dave Tilley who went to Ohio State, and he would come to practice, and we didn't really have a name. And he had just seen that movie called Zardoz. And he goes, man, I really like that movie. He says, we should call the band like Zarkwiff. And that's really how it came up.
All right.
So then he didn't stay in the band very long. And we ended up with a guy named Tim Pendergast, who was friends with my girlfriend and Tom Fritz, another West Side guy, and a singer named Dave Blakely.
Okay. And
who ended up big, heavy guy with really long hair, ended up being in the Outlaws or some kind of biker gang or something.
Okay, gotcha.
So that band actually played out, once again, we played some high school dances at my high school and at Tom's old high school. And, we played like the Grove City Community Fair and stuff like that. And we were playing songs nobody wanted to hear. Nobody wanted to hear a Robin Trower song or a Mop the Hoople song.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear, the Doobie Brothers and Bachman Turner Overdrive,
Okay.
and the stuff that was on the radio.
Yeah.
So once again, I'm in a band that's pretty good, but not very popular.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Musicians liked it though.
yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, we played to please ourselves
Yeah.
pretty much, and that's why we didn't work very much.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if we were any good or not. By that point in time, I was starting to get some good gear with Tom's help because he had a job,
Okay.
and uh, I ended up, he bought me an SG Special, Gibson SG Special, and then I ended up I had a dual Showman cabinet that I ended up traded for a Marshall head, a Marshall 100-watt head, and that guitar morphed in. That's when I really started to buy and sell and trade guitars.
Which, yeah, that's part of your story that I want to.
Yeah, that SG, well, actually it started a little before then, but that SG morphed into mini guitars.
Yeah. Did you ever get rid of it?
35 into a Dan Armstrong.
Yeah.
But I don't remember how that band actually broke up or quit playing. I just plain don't remember.
Okay.
Drugs and alcohol probably have a lot to do with that. I was actually drinking pretty heavy during that period of time too.
Okay.
But we just ended up just going separate ways. So I had graduated from high school by then, and I didn't want to start college for a year. So I started, I worked a job at a t-shirt printing place called Fraternity Sportswear. So I started out being a screen printer, silk screen printer out of high school. And then I ended up getting, for one thing or another, I ended up getting transferred to the shipping department, which was actually a godsend.
Okay.
What had happened is we shipped, they printed everything, t-shirts, glassware, and they would ship to fraternities and sororities all over the United States.
Yeah.
So back then, we'd have to pack the stuff up. We'd ship some UPS, ship some by truck, but then some went Greyhound. So I would take the Greyhound stuff down to the Greyhound office in downtown Columbus. So I knew I'd have some time to waste because I could tell them, traffic was bad or blah, blah, blah. So there was a music store down there called Whitey Lunzar's Music.
Okay.
About 2 blocks from Greyhound. So I knew a guy that worked there named Dino Bradley. And so I would go start hanging out there. I'd go down there for another hour and just hang out at the music store, before I went back to work. One thing led to another. I ended up being laid off at the t-shirt place. So I'd been there, maybe it was probably the late summer. So I'd been there maybe 6 months or something. And so I'd go down and hang at Whitey Lunzar's, and they ended up offering me a job because not only, I was a guitar player, but I also, even at that point, I knew quite a bit about equipment because I've always been one of those guys.
Yeah.
If I get a new guitar, new amplifier, the first thing I do is take it apart.
Okay.
I want to see what's inside.
Yeah.
And literature, I'd send away for literature and catalogs and stuff, and I'd cut the pictures out and put them up on my wall of stuff I wanted and things like that. So I've always been obsessed with it. And they kind of knew that, I knew as much as any salesman down there about the stuff they were selling. So, so they gave me a job down there, and then I ended up playing. Dino had a band. Dino's kind of he unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he had kind of a Dino, a blues rock kind of a band.
Okay.
And he needed a bass player. So I switched to bass and played bass for the Dino Bradley band for a while. And, we played out some, had this great drummer named Bimbo Brown. And he's, I talked to him not too long ago, but he's a great drummer. But anyway, that band, I don't know how that band folded. I know there's some recordings of it. We actually went in the recording studio in Columbus and did a couple of songs. And
what was the first time you recorded? Was that
probably late 74?
Okay.
Early 70, it was at late 74.
Okay.
We went to this little studio called
Was that
Sound
Dino
Amity
Bradley?
in Columbus. I don't know if those tapes exist or not. I think we did 2 originals of Dino's.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm the bass player on them. And then I was still messing around with guitar there, and that band kind of wasn't doing anything. And Dino quit Lunzars to go work somewhere else. So I ended up joining a band called Borrowed Time with a guy named Ed Whitney, who also worked at Whitey Lunzars. Their guitar player had quit. He asked me to come play guitar. Well, that band actually worked a lot. Okay. They were part of the Fraternity Managers Association. So we played frat parties virtually every weekend. And then we actually got into the Sugar Shack, and we played the Sugar Shack, which was the place to play, and played the Agora with that band. And it was for a bar band, we were kind of successful,
So what kind of material were you doing?
That band, I actually have a recording of that band. Ed had a studio in his basement, and our rehearsals, we'd rehearse in the studio, and we'd mic everything up, and we'd rehearse with headphones on, stuff like in a studio environment. Yeah. And we made a demo tape, and I have a copy of it actually I have it on CD now, but I had a cassette of it all these years. And it's got, let's see, Can't Get Enough of Your Love. The Bad Company Can't Get Enough. It's got, oh shoot, I'm trying to remember what else it has on it.
You did some radio stuff?
Yeah, some radio stuff. There's a Rolling Stones song on it. I can't remember which one. And then there's Flying Burrito Brothers, I think, is 6 Days on the Road. Is that what that song's called? And I think there might be a Jay Giles song on it.
Okay.
And our singer chick could play pretty good harp, so we could get away playing Giles songs correctly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it was more commercial, but with some stuff that was a little off the wall. But by that point in time, I realized that if you wanted to work, you had to play more commercial stuff. Yeah.
So the Jay Giles stuff, should be noted that their early stuff was a lot different than what they became.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were performing hard driving rhythm and blues, really cool.
All that early stuff. That Full House Live album is just incredible to this day. That's the pre MTV Jay Giles.
Right, yeah.
They were a hard driving. They were a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah,
they could keep up with anybody.
Yeah,
at that point in time, and they got smart and wrote some hits and made a lot of money.
Yeah, and then retired.
At least Peter did anyway.
Yeah,
but that band, through that band, I met, I had started, I'd become a regular at the Sugar Shack by that point. I actually started going there when I was 16.
All right.
And they didn't have pictures on driver's licenses back then.
Right.
So our old singer from E Pluribus Unum, Greg Patterson, who I'm still friends with, would loan me his driver's license, because we had it was close enough description. On the driver's license that it would pass. So I would start going there and seeing some pretty darn cool bands.
Yeah.
And
so you had a colorful teenage, your teenage years were colorful.
Oh, very. And I've left out, you don't want to know how much stuff I've left out. Running away from home at 14 and hitchhiking to California with a girl. There are many stories. There's a movie's worth of stories.
Yeah.
In my young life.
It'll be part 2, but that's
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I told you I did an interview with my friend Andy Harrison not too long ago, and we were there for almost 4 hours and got halfway through.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But I'm giving
the abridged version.
The Reader's Digest version.
Right.
Cliff's Notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started going to the Sugar Shack, and there was a particular band that was playing there a lot called Sky King. And it was Bob Hill, the guitar player for that band, and the bass player, Eric Moore, had been in a band in Columbus called the Capital City Rockets, they were probably the first Columbus band to get a national record deal. They did an album on Elektra Records, and it's still available.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can find it. They had a semi-hit song called "Breakfast in Bed Is What I Need," and the singer from that band was a guy named Jamie Lyons, who was the singer in the Music Explosion, who did Little Bit of Soul.
Okay.
He's the singer on Little Bit of Soul. So that band broke up, and Sky King formed, and they had a girl singer, and Glenn Cataline was playing drums, Bob Hill, Eric Moore, and
So how
Don
did you
Bloom
meet
on
Eric
keyboard.
Moore?
Huh?
How did you meet Eric Moore?
That through that band.
Okay.
I would go see them all the time, and then I worked at the Cool Music Store in Columbus, so they would come down to the music store now and then, and that's kind of how I met them. And I would go see Sky King every night they played. They played mostly commercial music, but not 100%. But they were really, really good.
Okay.
They were making tons of money, drawing great crowds. But Eric had this idea to put together his own band. Eric was he just kind of, he kind of one of those guys that danced to his own drummer and always had, what you saw is never really what you got. He always had he always had some kind of a ulterior motive.
Okay.
That's just the way he was. And so he had been thinking about putting together this band that he had a concept of. And so he and Glenn, they had heard me play guitar down there several times at Lunzar's.
Yeah.
So he and Glenn up and left Sky King to start a new project. And it was going to be called the Godz.
Yeah.
Eric had he had the concept for all white equipment, and he wanted to do all white lighting and blah blah blah. He had all these, some good concepts, some bad concepts.
Yeah.
So they came down there and asked me if I was interested actually they came down there and said, "Hey, can we go down and play?" We had a basement there, and that's where people rehearsed, they had lessons and stuff. Yeah. He goes, "Can we go down there and, play through some songs with you just for the heck of it?" Yeah. And I said, "Sure." So we did that, and they said, "Well, we're doing this band. You want to come?" And I said, yes.
Yeah.
So I worked at Lunzar's for a little bit longer, but then I went home and I quit. I quit my job, and I quit. I was going to Ohio State at the time, and I quit college on the same day. I went home, told my parents, I just quit college. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to be in this band called the Godz. That didn't go over very well.
Okay, I can imagine.
But by working at Lunzar's, I had amassed a small guitar collection. Because working in a music store, you could buy stuff cheap coming in there. So I sold off, part of my deal with the band was I sold off some stuff, and I put down a deposit and got us a band house.
Okay.
On Summit Street, right above the Ohio State campus. Okay. It was a double or duplex, whatever you want to call it. So that's where the band was going to live. Now, Eric knew these two guys, this band from Parkersburg, West Virginia, called Kingsley Fink. And they were a good band too. They had a girl singer, and they played down there. They played the circuit down there quite a bit. Really, really good band. But he had asked the keyboard player, Mike Adams, who also played guitar and sang, and the drummer, Hayward Law, if they would like to leave that band and come do this project, and get rich and famous and, write originals and blah, 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 blah. And they did. They left that band and they moved up to Columbus. All right. To do this band with us. Now, everybody lived at the band house except Glenn, because Glenn was married and already had an apartment. So he lived, with his wife there. But at that band house, there was anywhere between 8 and 20 people living there at any given time. The road crew lived there, girls in and out.
You're starting this band, and you already have a road crew. You're already thinking road crew and management and all this?
Not management, but road crew.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, we had a 3-guy road crew, and we
Okay.
hadn't even played a gig yet.
That is wonderful.
All we did was rehearsed in the basement. Well, Eric had a way of talking people into things. Man, he had a line of shit a mile long
All right.
until the day he died.
Okay.
You know, his and I would get into this later. His biggest, he's one of the most talented individuals I've ever met in my life.
Yes.
He just couldn't quit stepping on his own dick.
Yeah.
He just, man, he couldn't get out of character.
Okay. There was no quiet Eric Moore.
No, he started believing it. He started believing his own bullshit a little too much.
Okay.
And that's where the downfall was.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here we are at this band house, and every day we'd be painting our equipment white. The guys from Kingsley Fink had a PA. So we had a PA. We made these speaker cabinets, these big 215 speaker cabinets that were the worst sounding cabinet I ever heard in my life. But Eric wanted all the gear to look the same. So we had that. We painted a white B3, painted all the drums white, blah, blah, blah. And we would get up and practice at 10 o'clock every morning and practice till about 6, and then work on gear the rest of the night. Well, in the meantime, going to the Sugar Shack after that and drinking and doing Quaaludes.
Okay.
We're big into those. So
what years are we talking?
This is real early 76.
Okay.
It may be late 75, but I have a little trouble with that. I think it was real early 76.
Okay.
And we had a booking agent. We had a booking agent from Columbus, and we were a cover band at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And because we knew if we wanted to work in clubs at all, we would have to play covers. They didn't want to hear about any originals. I think we might have done one original at that time, which was a completely refined version of "Gotta Keep It Running."
Okay.
Probably a 2.5, 3-minute version of "Gotta Keep It Running."
Okay.
So that was our first original Eric song.
Okay.
So we went out, we started playing the bar circuit, some in Columbus. We played the Sugar Shack in Columbus, the Yellow Lion, the Safari East. Then we go down and play Ollie's in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Go up to Kent and play Filthy McNasty's. Gosh, some club over in Macomb, Illinois, we'd go play.
Okay.
And we were playing goofy stuff. I mean, we were playing some good stuff, some, Stones and stuff like that here and there. But I mean, I can remember us doing Bad Blood by Neil Sedaka, which was a really big hit song. We did They Do Run Run. We did Saturday Night by the Bay City Rollers.
All right.
Which now thinking back on that song, that's actually a pretty cool song. That's actually kind of a cool song, like sweet songs are cool songs.
Yeah.
But back then it was bubblegum.
Yeah.
But now it's cool. But we were doing all that kind of, we had a pretty eclectic song list.
So the Godz start off as a performance idea. We have a certain look. And we started this off with kind of mostly covers.
Yes.
Okay. Weird covers and stuff you wouldn't expect.
Yes.
You're not a wedding band cover, not that kind of cover.
No, but there's actually a video that exists. I don't know if it's online or not, of us playing some kind of a showcase at Denison University. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of bands played the showcase, and everybody just hated us. Yeah. I mean, just hated us. We were somewhere between, we were like glam bikers.
Yeah.
We kind of, there was no real concept for what we wore at that point. We were kind of, we were still wearing platform shoes and makeup, but leather jackets, that kind of thing. We were somewhere between
David Bowie,
who didn't exist at that time, and the New York Dolls.
Okay.
Which actually caused us to get fired from some clubs, get in fights in clubs, things like that. People just, they didn't dig it. Okay. We got fired from a club in Bowling Green, Ohio, before we even played a note, because we got in a fight with some of the jocks that were in the bar,
Okay.
And so a fist fight ensued and we got fired before we even played.
Okay.
So that's kind
That's not
of
fake.
that's kind of the way that all started.
Yeah.
Then, and once again, that feels like it went a really, really long time, but it didn't. That was probably most of 1976.
Okay. So
So
you start off with all these covers, but eventually you take a cover out, you put an original in.
yes. To the best of my recollection, "You Gotta Keep It Running" was the first song that we did. And then Eric might have brought in "Go Away." I mean, he had a lot of these songs already. Or "Baby, I Love You," one of the other songs from the first record. And Glenn had brought in that song "Guaranteed" that's on the first album.
Okay.
Which made me want to write. Now, before all this happened, I think we'd only been doing "Gotta Keep It Running." Before all this happened, Mike and Hayward were killed in a car accident.
Okay.
So we had played.
Mike and Hayward are the
other guitar player, keyboard player, and drummer. The guys from West Virginia.
Okay.
So we had procured some money from a guy in Columbus that used to follow the band that had inherited some money. So we'd procured some money from him to put together these promo packs for the band.
Yeah.
Nice color promo packs.
Yeah.
And we had played at the Sandpiper, which was our very first gig place, Sandpiper in Springfield, Ohio, which was also it was a Sandpiper swim club, but they had a bar in there. People used to literally sit in there. Their big thing down there was sniffing glue. Dean and Barry 88, and they'd sit in the club with brown paper bags on their faces, huffing glue in the club. I swear to you.
Makes you look like a choir boy.
It was a wild place.
Yeah.
Guys would ride their motorcycle into the club and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we'd gotten done playing, and I was as sick as I've ever been in my life. I was probably running a fever of 104. I had to sit down and play the second set, or the third set or fourth set. I don't remember how many we did there, at least 3.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down and play. Mike and Hayward the next morning were going to go to West Virginia to pick up the promo packs because we had them made down there. They knew somebody in West Virginia to have them made.
Okay.
And we also had some blown up speakers, and they were going to take them down there and get reconed. And I was actually going to go with them, and I was sick and I didn't go. So Hayward decided, instead of taking the van, he had this thing called a Bradley GT, which is basically a fiberglass chaparral looking kind of body on a Volkswagen frame. And they were very popular back then. It was blue sparkle. And it was cool looking. So they decided to drive that down to Parkersburg, and they were hit head on by a semi.
Wow.
And literally melted. The car melted. All the money they had of ours was gone. They and they died in this car accident. Nobody knows the exact circumstances of it. Though the 2 weeks later, the truck driver committed suicide. It's kind of a bizarre thing. So I had gone home. I was so sick that I didn't want to stay in the band house. I had actually gone home to my parents' house because I was that sick, and my doctor was still in Grove City. And they called and told me that about the accident and blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing I know, I'm well enough to go back to the band house, and Eric has asked Bob Hill from the Capital City Rockets and the band that he and Eric and Glenn were in together to join the band. So now we have Bob Hill in the band, who is also a very experienced songwriter, a guitar player, and singer.
Yeah.
And he's also way older than the rest of it. He's 13 years older than me.
Okay.
But it's kind of ironic because he's probably the guy that looked the youngest in the band.
Right. Yeah.
But Sky King had kind of broken up after, all those guys left, and he wasn't doing anything. So he came and joined the band. So at that point in time, he brought in a couple of originals because he'd been writing for years. And at that point in time, I decided I should start writing some stuff.
Mhm.
So the first song that I wrote was a song called Under the Table, which is on the first album. And then I wrote Cross Country, which wasn't called that because I didn't have any words. So Glenn and I kind of sat down and wrote the words to that song, which was the second song I ever wrote.
That is
So
bizarre.
we started
You know
morphing
that
those.
you know
Huh?
that's rare, right?
It's what?
You know that's rare. The first two songs you ever written make it to an album.
Yeah, and they may still be the two best songs I've ever written. I
Okay.
don't know, 40 years later.
Okay.
They're certainly the two that have lasted the longest.
Mhm.
But so we start morphing these songs into the set. So now we're almost half and half, and we're not doing any goofy covers at this point in time. We're doing, I can remember doing like a couple of Lou Reed songs, like we did Sweet Jane.
Okay.
We did, because I sang that song.
Okay.
We actually we did a couple of Kiss songs.
Okay.
I know we did Strutter because I sang that song too.
That's wonderful.
And
that was my gateway band.
that was what?
That was my gateway band.
Oh yeah, man. I saw Kiss open for Rory Gallagher, and it changed my life.
Yeah.
I was a fan, as I still am to this day.
Yeah.
But we started morphing more originals into the set.
Mhm.
And that's when Eric really more started becoming the character Eric, more talking to the audience.
Okay.
And that rap section that's in rap, meaning talking instead of the music rap.
Yep.
We just called it rap at that point.
Mm-hmm.
The talking section, Gotta Keep It Running, was kind of going on in between all the songs.
Okay.
He'd have stories for songs, and that's just the way he talked to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't morph into that song for quite a long time.
Okay.
So our big song we didn't even end with that song. The big song we ended with at that point in time was Candy's Gone Bad, the Golden Earring song that ended up on the first album.
Okay.
But we always ended with that. So we were still playing the smaller clubs. I remember playing still going down to Ollie's in West Virginia and playing the Yellow Lion and playing the Safari East. But we started playing the Agora on like a Friday or Saturday night, which was a big place. It's called the Newport Music Hall now. Yeah. It's still on campus in Columbus.
Yep.
Holds legally 12 or 1,400 people.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, I mean, as the Agora, everybody, like I said, I saw Kiss there open for Rory Gallagher. Yeah. I saw Queen there, Bad Company there, AC/DC there. Everybody on their way up used to play that room and still do. So we started playing there for, we'd draw 30, 40, 50 people that would come see us at the smaller bars.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why, but all of a sudden I can remember, I still have some of the posters. I can remember we would go down and literally staple, posters of us playing, like the next week on the telephone poles down on campus to get people to go there.
Yeah.
We were starting to get some radio station support because we'd hired a manager, a guy named Rob Friedheim, who worked for it was Ohio State concerts or something. He worked for the big promotion thing out of Ohio State that booked all the concerts coming into St. John Arena and stuff like that. And he knew all the people at the radio station. So the radio station started talking about us a little bit. And I mean, to this day, I don't think anybody can describe to you or give you a reason for what happened. All of a sudden, this band that's drawn 30 or 40, 50, 100 people, all of a sudden, the next time we play there, it's 500 people. The next time it's 750 people.
Word of mouth.
And then it just blew up. The small clubs were over.
So that here is
crowds in Columbus at the Agora, which is the only place we would play there. And it became an event to see. Godz.
Here's what, and I want to ask you this, because one of the things that I have heard was that you have played all these different towns in Ohio, and you're like planting seeds. people are hearing from you all over the place as the Godz.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually that's what you guys are like. For those who don't know Ohio, it's like Buckeye. A Buckeye is a thing that is like patriotism. It's like state pride. You know what I
Well,
mean?
especially in Columbus. I mean, Buckeye,
Yeah.
the Ohio State Buckeyes are an institution here.
It is an institution. It is we take pride in this. We all have Buckeye paraphernalia, but the Godz are the same way. And I think some of that because you played everywhere for a while.
Yeah.
And it's like you would play anywhere, and you treated every room like it was 20,000 people.
We gave it our all
yeah.
the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is
we in our mind, even as a bar band, and especially me being very young. I mean, I was 19 years old when I joined that band, and 21 when we did the first album. And in fact, I turned 21 in the studio, I think, maybe. I was a rock star at that point in my mind. I was doing exactly what I wanted.
You're on your path.
I was performing in front of people, which was exactly, I had found my way.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
Other than the lots of money part.
Yeah.
we were poor. Though when we started playing the Agora for all those people, we actually started making pretty good money.
I was going to say.
But we at that point in time, we're setting attendance records in this room over national bands. We had, who Budgie is?
Yeah.
They opened for us.
Oh yeah, I believe this.
At the
probably lots of others too,
because we were so big there. Cheap Trick opened for us.
Yes.
Because that was in Cleveland though, because we were just huge in that market. So the radio station and our manager started having people, having record companies come in and look at the band. And a couple came in and passed, and we actually got signed by Jimmy and Donnie Einer from Millennium Records, which was an offshoot of they were owned by Casablanca, subsidiary of Casablanca. And they came to see us. Then Donnie came back and brought Don Brewer with him because Jimmy Einer had produced a Grand Funk. Jimmy Einer's produced everybody.
Okay.
And then Donnie, of course, went on to run Sony and run Columbia Records and stuff for years and years after Millennium. But they brought Don Brewer back to see us because they wanted to use Donnie as a producer.
Yeah.
At that point, because Grand Funk had broken up and they had remained friends, and Donnie wanted to be a producer. So they brought him, and we got signed that night. They offered us a record deal that night on live performance. That band had never, ever been in the studio. We never recorded anything.
Yeah.
Ever. It was just, and Donnie Einer told me that one song in, he knew he was signing the band.
Oh, yeah.
Because of it was like hysteria. It wasn't Beatlemania, but it was still was hysterical as you can get in the Agora.
That's the stuff that they cannot really, I don't know if they can or not, but the record companies can't make that. That is something that it's not.
Right. Exactly.
It's
exactly.
Like you have the stuff they can't make.
Right. Pretty much. Yes. Yeah. And we're a package. I mean, we're there. We're tight. We know what we're doing, and they like our songs.
Yeah.
So that had to be early. It was cold. So it was early 77 when that happened. Then we ended up going up to record actually, it wasn't my birthday at the studio, but Elvis died while we were in the studio. So that must've been August of 77.
Okay.
Because I think Elvis died in August of 77.
Mm-hmm.
So we go up to Grand Funk Studio in Howell, Michigan, and it's called the Swamp, and go up to record the album. Now, not only are we doing this, but Grand Funk, that's the band I left out of the band's material that we used to play back when I was in high school bands. Man, we played a ton of Grand Funk because I still love Grand Funk Railroad.
Same here.
It's one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah.
But now I'm in the studio with a guy that is one of my
Idol.
biggest heroes.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with Don Brewer, for
Yeah.
God's sake, and I'm recording through one of Mark Farner's amplifiers and blah 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 blah. So I think we took probably less than 2 weeks to do that, to do the record. We recorded more songs than made the first album. But the funny thing about that, well, two things about that. The way Donnie recorded and Grand Funk recorded was different the way some other people record. They record all music with no scratch vocal track. And you come back and do the vocal track.
Okay.
So we did that. And then we had to come back and do the vocal track. And that big talk section in the between in Gotta Keep It Running, Eric has to overdub that, not knowing how long it's going to be. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, and it took a while.
It's kind of rare. Honestly, it's kind of rare to have that overdub section, what that section is in a song. That is something usually somebody will put in the song live after
it's spontaneous. Yeah. So he had to make it sound spontaneous, yet figure out exactly where we started and ended different parts in there, because there are parts in there. It's not just a bunch of crap going on. Well, it is a bunch of crap going on, but it's parts. So
organized crap.
So he and it worked. He did that. It was the same with it's the same with Cross Country. I did not record my guitar solo while we were playing the song. I had to go back and restructure my guitar solo to fit the middle section of the song. So it was kind of weird, but we got it done. So we go back down to Columbus, and record label calls. They said, "Hey, you guys didn't record Candy's Gone Bad." We went, "Well, no, that's not our song. That's a Golden Earring song." They go, oh no, you're recording that song." So we all jumped in the van, which we had a van at that time, is Bob's, and with the equipment, and drove right back up to Michigan, set up in the studio, played through the song once. And that song is live. Mm-hmm. And what you got is what you got. Mm-hmm. But it came out good, and it came out very powerful. That's one of my favorite songs on the record. Mm-hmm. But so that song they ended up cutting maybe 3 of the originals that we had recorded at that point. Mm-hmm. None of Bob's songs made it on the first record, and there was another one of Glenn's that didn't make it, another one of Eric's that didn't make it on that record. Okay. A couple of them ended up on the second album, but there was some, like I said, some unreleased material from those sessions. I have no idea where it is, but it exists somewhere. Yeah. So basically, then we released the album in the early 78 when that album was released. I don't think they got it out for Christmas. They may have, but I don't remember, because we didn't start our first tour until 78, which was February of 78. Mm-hmm. We went out with that's when we started the tour with Angel. Okay. In St. Louis. Yeah. So how far do you want me to go with this? You want me to finish the Godz for you?
Well, yeah. Let's talk.
Or do you want to ask me some questions and shut me up for a minute?
No. Okay, so that first tour, who all did you open for? It was Angel. Did you open for Kiss at all?
Here's one of the big. Here's one of the Godz urban legends that I'm gonna finally tell everybody about. Okay. That is not true in any way, shape, or form. Okay. It's even in print, in books, that we opened for Kiss. Okay. Never, ever. We were never on stage with Kiss, ever, anywhere. The closest we came was Paul Stanley coming to see us. And I knew it was him because I'd seen those guys without makeup years before that. Yeah. And at a show in Columbus at Vets Memorial, I was there at sound check. Yeah. And I saw him without makeup, and I knew it was Paul Stanley. He was at the oh gosh, what's the name of that place? I can't think of anything today. In New York City, it was us, Angel, and Judas Priest. Okay. And it was Judas Priest's first live American date ever. And Paul Stanley was there, sans makeup, sitting backstage. Okay. Never talked to him and everything, but I knew it was him sitting there. Yeah. And then Ace Frehley being at a party in Long Beach that they had on some big ship there that they use for parties. And it was a party for us and Angel, and he was there. And I don't even think I talked to him there, but that's as close as we ever came to doing anything with Kiss.
Okay.
So
The urban legend is that Gene Simmons once met, it was on the Sunset Strip, Eric Moore, and he goes to Eric Moore, goes, "You're the guy that did all the drugs back in the 70s." That maybe it's probably yeah,
not
it could
true.
be.
Not
Yeah,
true.
it might. It's probably true. He did do the drugs in the 70s, but
yeah, but the Gene Simmons thing, no.
yeah,
No. So we never had.
he's not the only one to do drugs in the 70s, though. Is what I'm saying.
Right, exactly. And you know,
To point him out.
The rest of us were doing a pretty good job of it at that point in time too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Godz facade out there that, you know, that have just morphed into things that they just never were.
Yeah.
So no
Urban
Kiss.
myth.
We were with started off just us and Angel. Then it was us and Angel, and Blue Oyster Cult was the headliner. They were, you know, Blue Oyster Cult was an arena band for about 2 years, I think, when they, you know, when Godzilla was out or whatever, you know, song they had.
Yeah, Don't Fear the Reaper. And
yeah. So we were playing like arenas with them.
yeah.
Then there was other bands I can remember being on the bill. I remember Head East being on some dates. Then we did a date with Rainbow, with Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, and REO Speedwagon in New York. There were a bunch of middle acts on the Angel tour, and I can't remember most of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'd drink a bottle of wine, a bottle of Blue Nun before we played, then another one after we got done playing.
Okay.
So I was always 3 sheets, not to mention we were all on Quaaludes. We had prescriptions for Quaaludes, so we had a never-ending supply of those. But we seemed to play okay.
More on that later.
Well, yeah, you kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
So
that first tour, how long did that first tour last?
That tour lasted, I'm going to say, up till April, it was after that. It was probably May or June, and it was supposed to keep going, but in Columbus, Georgia, one of Blue Oyster Cult's semis went flying off a bridge over a river there and killed the truck driver.
Okay.
And a bunch of the, whatever equipment was in that rig, and that kind of ended the tour right there. So we came back, and then we just started doing some I think we just started doing some one-offs ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it had to be around May or June. Because in June we headlined at Music Hall in Cleveland, and that's when Cheap Trick opened for us.
Okay.
There was a Casablanca band called Trigger who did one album for them, and then Cheap Trick, and then the Godz at Music Hall up there. And we probably played the Cleveland Agora, maybe the Columbus Agora, something like that. But later that summer is when we went to Bearsville
in album number 2
to do the second album, which we were not prepared for in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Well, you work all your life to get to album number 1, and then a year later, we have to work on album number 2. And what was the story with album number 2, in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, failure. Bad stuff. First off, we didn't have enough material.
Okay.
At least not enough good material for it. We'd been writing on the road a little bit. Glenn and I actually wrote 714 in a hotel room with me playing an electric guitar, not plugged into anything, and him beating on a pillow with his hands.
Okay.
And I have a cassette tape of that.
All right.
He and I doing that. And he wrote another song during that point called Drunks and Bums and Slobs that never saw the light of day with that band anyway.
Yeah.
So we'd written a couple of things. I had not written anything on my own at all.
What did the songwriting process look like for you? Was it always instantaneous?
You mean for me personally or the
Yeah,
band?
for you
The
personally.
band never wrote together.
Okay.
Glenn and I were the only ones that ever wrote together in that band.
Okay.
Everybody else wrote on their own.
Okay.
Eric, I think, would have pieces of things, and it would take him a while to put something together. But then
Yeah.
sometimes he'd just sit down and write the whole thing. Bam, done.
Yeah.
Bob, I couldn't tell you. I think
Was he
Bob.
pretty adept at guitar, Eric?
Yes, he's a good guitar player.
Okay.
Yes, was a good guitar player.
Yeah.
But and I'm one of those guys. I generally wrote music to my songs first.
Yeah.
I am not a lyricist. I am a terrible lyricist,
Uh-huh.
still to this day.
Yeah.
And so I would always bring music into people.
Okay.
Though for the second album, the 2 songs that I wrote that got on there, I wrote the whole songs.
Okay.
The Rock Your Socks Off, I wrote while I was driving the car.
Okay.
And somebody was riding with me, and I said, "Hey, start writing this down." And
Okay.
I just made up the words, and it sounds like it.
You guys could carry cassette tape wherever you went.
In hotel rooms and things,
Okay.
but not so much in the car,
Okay.
But we all had these JVC tape recorders that we carried on the road with us to listen to music, of
Yeah.
course, and in case we would write something.
Yeah.
So we get to the studio in Bearsville. Donnie Brewer is going to produce again.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go in to try to do a little pre-production and figure out what songs we're going to do. And meanwhile, we're still kind of writing the songs in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
The song that I have on the second album called "I'll Buy Your Love," which is just dumb song. I actually wrote it up there in the studio.
Okay.
And and that one just kind of came together all at once because we needed another song.
Yeah.
So being the way we were and what we thought we wanted, and the way Donnie saw things and the way the record company saw things were on 3 different planes.
Okay.
The songs we wanted to put on the record company didn't necessarily want us to put them on the record. Donnie could go either way, but he already, gave himself an ulcer doing the first album with us because we weren't easy to, he would have to bribe us to do things.
Yes.
It's like, I'll buy your favorite bottle of booze, tonight if you guys can get through 2 basic tracks today.
Okay.
That kind of thing. So he ends up leaving. Because I can't do this. There was a bar in Woodstock called Joyous Lake, and we were there one evening after we'd just gotten there, and he looks at me, goes, I'm quitting. I'm not going to do this. Because he and I had become really good friends at that point. In between the first 2 albums, I went up to the Swamp and played. They did an album called Flint, which was everybody from Grand Funk except Mark Farner, and I went up and played on that album.
Yeah.
So he and I become good friends, and that's where I met Craig Frost, and I became really good friends with all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Well, if you're leaving, I'm leaving." He goes, "No." He goes, "See this out, do it, do the record, see this out." So they either couldn't find any producers, didn't want to pay any producers, or nobody wanted to do the record. So Eric ended up producing the record with the help of a couple of really good engineers up there.
Okay.
Some of the songs are okay. We changed everything about our recording process from the first album to the second album, which was a big mistake. We had some like boogie amps come in, that we rented and stuff like that. The first album, Donnie made us set up our stage setup, of course, in different rooms with plexiglass and stuff in front, dampeners in front of them. But we basically plugged in and played like we did live.
Yeah.
Because that's gear I want you to use. I want you to sound like that. Second album, we didn't do that. And we tried experimentation with different amps and guitars and blah, blah, blah. So we ended up not sounding anything like that. Second album didn't sound anything like the first album at all. Albeit there are some good songs on there that if they were re-recorded would probably be okay.
Yeah.
But the actual production of the album is awful, just awful. It's thin. Eric wanted us to sound like, and in his words, and he thinks thought it sounded pretty bad after a while too. He goes, "I wanted the band to sound like Sha Na Na." So he's a big old rock. Well, you can tell he's a big 3-chord rock and roll.
Yeah.
And but it was a mistake, and the album cover's pretty good, but the album sucked, and it tanked.
Yeah.
And we went on a tour to do it, and we went to Texas. And I know that tour started in November because we were on a bus Thanksgiving Day leaving for Texas.
Okay.
And that tour was with Triumph, who we'd never heard of, who unbeknownst to us at that point had
an album called Rock and Roll
Machines, and their album is called Rock and Roll Machine.
Yeah.
They have white gear. We have white gear.
Yeah.
Now the difference between the two bands is our white gear is real. There's Rick Emmett's stacks were hollow in the back.
Oh, really?
They just carried him out. He played through some Yamaha amp that they had on the side, but his Marshall stacks were hollow in the back.
Okay.
So we did a bunch of dates with we were supposed to co-headline with them that tour. Some dates they'd headline, some dates we would, but we ended up just opening because we wanted to get done early and get out of there.
Uh-huh.
So we opened up the whole tour. We did a couple of off dates, like in Killeen, Texas. There's a bar there called Crazy Horse that everybody plays.
Mm-hmm.
And we branch off and go do that, ourselves. Then we, a bunch of those dates were with, Mahogany Rush was on a bunch of those dates too.
Yeah.
We didn't really get on too well with the Triumph guys.
Well, they weren't and I don't know, they weren't the party animals.
No, they weren't, and they didn't appreciate us being that way.
Yeah.
Because we would play pranks on them on stage.
Uh-huh.
Like have a remote controlled semi go across the stage while they were playing.
Uh-huh.
We'd go by Hustler magazines and cut pictures out and tape them down in front of their mic stands and stuff like that. And they weren't appreciative of that kind of stuff at all. So they didn't much care for us. Not to mention they had to follow us.
Okay.
And I don't think they were too happy about that either. Because both bands, if you know rock and roll, Texas is a unique market to everywhere else in the United States. Mm-hmm. You can be huge in Texas and not anywhere else.
And the other part of this, you can be huge in Texas and completely tour there and nowhere else.
Exactly. And bands do still to this day.
Yeah.
So
it's like its own country.
Both of those bands were huge in Texas. So we were as big as they were down there. And so, we had a really good following down there, and they would have to follow us every night, and they weren't happy about it. So after that tour ended, Glenn and Bob quit the band. There were a lot of internal strifes, terrible management we had. Our manager was more fucked up on drugs than we were. Mm-hmm. Money missing, blah, 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 blah. And so we Glenn and Bob quit the band, not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. Eric thought that I was going to quit when they quit, and I threw a curveball at him, and I didn't. Because unbeknownst to me, he'd been negotiating with the record company to do a third Godz album, because we had actually signed, I think, a 4-album deal with options. Mm-hmm. And their plan for him was to go out there and he would just become the Godz and use studio musicians that they had out there. And that was all unbeknownst to me. Mm-hmm. So I threw a curveball at him by not quitting. So we hired 2 guys in Columbus that I knew, Bob Catapano and Rick Hall, and they became the new Godz guys.
Okay. So
we recorded a really terrible demo that we did on a boom box at the Sugar Shack where we used to rehearse, and we just recorded these originals that we had on this boom box. And Eric and I took them out to California to the Casablanca people, and the songs were horrible. The recording was horrible, and this wasn't the plan that they had all along. So they basically dropped us at that point. So we came back and did a couple of dates with that band. Eric gets in a motorcycle accident with a motorcycle that he'd owned for about 6 hours. And he was going on to an exit ramp at about 15 miles an hour, runs off the side of the road and breaks his leg really, really bad. So he's in a full leg cast. So we play the rest of these dates with him sitting down with a leg cast on. And it's gotten to the point where he's barely coherent all the time anyway. So Bob and Rick and I go to sound checks, and Eric doesn't come to sound checks anymore. I had bought a bass for whatever reason, and the three of us are we're just jamming at sound check, and I'm playing bass. And I had some songs, that I'd written either for the second album or what was going to be the third album. And at that point in time, I got pretty creative. I started writing some songs, not knowing what the future held. So we're rehearsing those songs, and not long into that, Eric ends up sending us all letters and firing all of us from the Godz.
All right.
Our services were no longer needed.
All right. So this is the beginning
of Rosie. Of Streetheart. Okay. So so Bob and Rick and I decide to get their old bass player, a guy named Dennis Craig, who I'd known for a long time, and we form a band called Streetheart. We procured a place to rehearse above a club in Columbus, and I was flat broke at that point in time. The Godz really hadn't made any money other than being on the road some. And what money I did have, I either wasted on booze, drugs, living, guitars, whatever. I was flat broke, so I had to get a job.
Yeah.
And so I went down, I worked at a place called Long's Bookstore on Ohio State campus. I was there for decades and decades. I had a friend that worked down there, and he got me a job. So I'm working this job, and those guys are playing in a band, the band that they were in before they came to the Godz. They went back to play with them again. It was called Cornerstone. So they were playing like 6 nights a week at this club. Okay. So basically we would rehearse when they got done playing. We would rehearse all night long from like 3 a.m, until I would have to go to work at 8 a.m. Okay. So sometimes I get an hour's sleep, sometimes I wouldn't. So that's what became Streetheart. So New Year's Eve has to be between 79 and 80. I'm going to say we debuted at the Sugar Shack.
As Streetheart? As
Streetheart, without a lead singer. Me and Bob Catapano were the lead singers. We played almost all original stuff, probably 90% new original stuff, and no Godz songs. Because we were kind of done with that stuff. So we were trying a whole new thing. And it went over just out of respect for us being in the Godz at one point, but it wasn't great. And neither one of us have any business fronting a band. We can both sing, but neither one of us are lead singers.
Yes.
So we get this guy, our sound man knew of this guy from Washington, D.C. named Butch Trinkle. That's really his name. Okay. So he came there, and he became the singer in the band. Okay. And we went up to Cleveland and did a demo, and tried to send it around and shop it to no avail. Then Butch quit, and then Bob and Rick quit. So it's just me and Dennis. So by that time we had changed the band name to Rosie, because a friend of mine, I got the name Streetheart out of one of those record album buying guides, price guides. Okay. I used to look through it because I used to collect records. Yeah. And there was a Bobby Darin album called Streetheart. Okay. And I always thought that was just the coolest name. Okay. But a friend of mine lives in Indianapolis called and said, "Hey, there's a band called Streetheart out of Canada." Okay. I went, "No, I didn't know that." And it was, of all people, it was Paul Dean's band, the guy from Loverboy. Okay. So we changed the name. Rick Hall, our drummer, actually came up with the name Rosie, which we always had this joke about Rosie Palmer and her 5 sisters, and that's where the name came from. We're just sitting eating dinner. He goes, "How about Rosie?" And we went, "Okay." Yeah. So that became Rosie. So there had been a band from the Atlanta area that came up here and played. They were called Smokin'. Really, really good band. They had a guitar player named John Level, who still lives in Nashville, or Atlanta, who's a really, really great guitar player. singer named Carl Sheeler, drummer Bobby Booz, bass player Robert West.
Mhm.
They were getting fed up with this band because of the way that John ran the band. They had this band bus that they all traveled in,
Uh-huh.
and John basically took all the money, and then he was paying those guys $5 a day on the road. That's what they made. They were expected to eat on that, buy drumsticks, strings, whatever, $5 a day. So they were getting fed up with it. But rest assured, they were a good band.
Yeah.
They were playing cool, really progressive, really great music. But I knew that Bobby and Carl, I used to go see them, and I knew they were getting fed up with it.
Yeah.
So Dennis and I decided to call Bobby and Carl and say, hey, Rosie broke up, because they were aware of us too, because we were probably the two biggest bands playing around Columbus at the time.
Mhm.
And they said, sure, let's try this. So they came to Columbus, and we rehearsed a couple of times, and bam, done.
That was
that became Rosie, but with Dennis Craig on bass.
Okay.
We end up playing a lot, and that band starts getting super popular, in the bar scene around here. We're playing all the bigger bars. We're drawing great crowds here. The Alrosa Villa, which started out as a really small bar, the front bar, they couldn't get enough people in there, to see us. So, and that's what spurred Rick. There's some story about Eric Moore telling him to build the back of that building. And it's another urban legend.
Yeah.
It's not true. The Godz had never even played there.
Okay.
Ever, until way later on, till the big building was already built, way later on. So Rosie and a band called the Muffs, who changed their name to Money, if you hear either of those names, band,
John
were both drawing great crowds there. So Rick decided to build on the back of the club.
Mhm.
So we end up being in this. We played at the Agora. It might have been the Newport by then, on a Wednesday night or something, because they used to have live bands on Wednesdays. Actually, a lot of stuff went on Wednesdays. We used to play this huge place called the Dixie Electric on the west side on Wednesday nights, and put 2,000 people in there on a Wednesday night when people still went out.
Yeah.
So we were playing the Agora on a Wednesday, and there was some big battle of the bands happening the next night that we didn't want any part of. We never signed up for it, didn't want to do it. And they saw us there, and they said, hey, we need one more band for this battle of the bands. Your gear is already set up. Why don't you do it? So we said, okay. And in the back of our minds, we already knew we were going to win, because, we were just the thing in Columbus at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, we won. And it ends up, this is a big national company. They own Del Monte and a bunch of stuff, and it's some big tobacco company. I can't remember which one it is that put these things on. So we go down to Florida, to Daytona Beach, and it's a 3-day thing with 50 bands from every state around the United States. We're one of the first bands on the first days. Mm-hmm. And we're thinking, great, we're going to go play. By the third day, everybody's going to forget about us. And we went and saw some other bands. There were some really, really good bands that played. But long story short, we end up winning the damn thing. Mm-hmm. So we win this national battle of the bands. And we met a booking agent down there. So we end up staying in Florida and playing the bar circuit down there for a while. Like the Button and, whatever all these places were down there, 6-night-a-week gigs where you're playing 3-4 sets a night. And so we stay down there for a while. In the meantime, the new Alrosa opens, and we can't be there for the grand opening. so McGuffey Lane did it. And it's the only time they ever played the Alrosa. There, because they were not an Alrosa band. It was a completely different crowd. Yeah. So when we got back, we had become kind of disillusioned with Dennis Craig, and Bobby and Carl really wanted Robert West to join the band, the guy from Smokin'. Okay. So we kind of let Dennis go after all of that, and brought in Robert. And about that time, as our manager at the time, we were part of the winnings of winning the Battle of Bands was to record a single when people still did that. So we were going to record a single, and somehow he talked them into fronting a whole EP for us. So not only that, we went down and recorded in Atlanta at Web 4 Studios, and that became the Rosie EP that we released. And in those sessions, we also recorded a song called Sorry I Forgot Your Name, which ended up on the Precious Metal album.
Yeah.
The Rosie Precious Metal album, but it's also on it's the first track on the QFM radio Hometown album, which they used to do every year. Yeah. They called us and said, "Hey, you guys need to record a song for the Hometown album. Just send us something. It's the opening spot on the record. Just do it." Yeah. So we did, and that was that. And we're actually starting to get, a lot of push from the radio station, because we're drawing people, a lot of people, and that's good for them too. Mm-hmm. So we record the EP, and just come back and we start, we just keep doing what we're doing. We're doing stuff that local bands shouldn't be doing, like an in-store at Peaches, with a line outside the door to get in to see a bunch of guys that are from Columbus. Yeah. We did had to be between 80 and 81 or 81 and 82. I don't remember. We did a live simulcast New Year's Eve from the Alrosa on QFM. They shut off all programming to do a live simulcast with a local band. Okay. Which is unheard of.
Was that your first time at Alrosa?
No, we've been playing Alrosa lots.
Even the smaller Alrosa.
No, we had played the smaller Alrosa, yes.
Okay.
And then and we'd been playing the bigger one, but we'd play there, we'd play like usually Thursday, Friday, and Saturday there, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and do capacity every night in there. And whenever we played, however many nights we wanted to play.
Yeah, and they expand on it, and you were still selling out.
Yes, and not to mention playing other places in Columbus. We would play, the Screamin' Willie's had this big bar on the east side and one on the north end. We'd play both of those and still sell it out. The place I told you about over on the west side, Dixie Electric, we would sell it out. People just went out then, and loved that band. So we end up getting an offer from a local record company to do an album. And that's what became Precious Metal. We recorded that in Columbus. Yeah. And that one of the songs on there that I it's one of my songs called Too Much Too Soon. That song actually ended up, it's another thing where, before the big corporations took over all the radio stations, they would play local stuff. That song was on rotation at QFM for over a year. And it was on heavy rotation even for a while. And it's a local thing, and they just don't. QFM around here, hats off to them. They're starting to do that again. They just did another Hometown album.
That seems to be the thing that the Columbus music scene has, and always had going for it, but all the pieces work together.
Yes.
Okay.
Cleveland.
What builds a scene? Some of the questions that I like
too.
Yeah.
Cleveland with WMMS. They also had that with Kid Leo up there, who was super responsible for breaking the Godz. Yeah. But the same thing. Yeah. They would do their.
Can't do it without that support, that synergy.
Yes. They would do, and Rosie even played a couple of these, so did the Godz. They would do either a breakfast show or a lunchtime show live from the Cleveland Agora up there live on WMMS. And that helps everybody up there. It helps the radio station, it helps the clubs, it helps the bands. It's kind of that one hand washes the other thing.
Yeah.
But when, and I'm not trying to, be Joe Hippie or something, but when the corporations come in and take over this stuff, it's all about advertising dollars, and that's all they care about, which they need to care about. But then the pre-programming comes in. here are your 30 songs, that are on rotation.
Yeah.
That's why QFM just got a new music director there, or program director there. And he's going completely, when I was down there doing on the radio in November with Carl Sheeler, we were promoting the Rosie reunion show during Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
We were on the air with Archie, and they do this thing at 5 o'clock where they were, hell, they played Fastway, for God's sake,
My first concert.
Yeah, I said, and I said, now that's the way radio is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And they're doing all these big local promos now, and did another hometown album, and they're trying to get it back to the way, because everybody is suffering.
Yeah.
Radio is suffering. They can't get advertisers like they used to,
Mm-hmm.
Sirius and all that stuff like that has taken a lot of that stuff away from them. Yeah. And so the obvious solution is try to go back to the way it used to be when it worked. Local people see local bands, they listen to local radio, and that's what you're trying to get.
So the local bands, you go see the local bands because big name bands were once local bands.
Right, exactly.
And it's your building, it's like that, yeah.
Exactly. And now you're supporting the local bands, so their fans are now supporting your radio station, which means they're going to support your advertisers and blah blah blah. I mean, you need the local people. I hate to say that. And Columbus, as you were saying when I so rudely interrupted you about Cleveland, sorry about that.
No,
Columbus, people around here bitch about the music scene. And a lot of the people that do have not been other places. I've been to a lot of other places, and so have you.
Yeah.
I mean, the music scene, local music scene in most other places, including major cities, is non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's one of the reasons I never picked up when I was living in Las Vegas for 24 years. I never played in local bands there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because even if you're in a local band there, you're lucky to play out once or twice a month. Lucky.
Yeah.
And even then, you're going to get an hour somewhere and nobody really cares. Here, it's not what it used to be. You can't play in one band and make a living like we all used to do. Mm-hmm. But you can go out and see local live music here pretty much 7 nights a week.
Yeah.
There are less places to play than there ever have been, but there's still more places to play here than there are in most other places.
Yes.
We have it pretty darn good.
There's also, there may or may not be a rebuilding time.
I'm thinking, we have several. There's a new venue that just opened up in Marysville, which is not too, it's 30 minutes up the road. Mm-hmm. It's a big venue. QFM this Friday or this Thursday, they're doing, they have a house band every year that plays a lot of their events, like the Ohio State tailgate parties and stuff like that. The Final Four bands are doing that this Thursday. The King of Clubs, where we did the Rosie thing.
Yes.
He's bringing in all kinds of midline national acts.
Well, the people he's bringing in are like somebody my age. They're not midline. They're the guys that we used to see back in the day.
Well, exactly. Well, and I don't mean to say this the way it's going to sound. It's one of those places you play on your way up.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of those places you play on your way back.
Yes.
And that happens to all of us.
Yeah.
That's not to say that the bands still aren't great, but the fact of the matter is, people my age, and I don't know how old you are. I imagine you're quite a bit younger than me.
53.
Okay, I'm 65.
Yeah.
But the people in our age group are still the people that are going out to see the bands. When we did the Rosie reunion shows there are so many, the place is packed, and I know most of those people. I'm seeing the same faces out there. They're, still standing there spending a lot of money drinking, having fun, knowing the words to the songs. They're still the people that support live music, and they still do. So I'm hoping, with the resurgence of some new clubs open. Somebody had to take the place of the Al Rosa anyway, which the King of Clubs did. Yeah. And, I'm hoping, and that's one of the reasons I moved back here, because I want to play live music here again.
Yes. How did you meet Bob Seger? How did that all thing happen?
That happened. I got a phone call in December of 1982 from Don Brewer. And Bob, in early 82, Dave Teagarden, his longtime drummer, quit. He left the band, and Drew Abbott left the band also. I don't know the circumstances. He just wasn't there anymore, his longtime guitar player. Mm-hmm. Craig Frost, after the Flint thing didn't happen, they had fired Robin Robbins from the Seger band or whatever. Once again, I don't know. Craig went to audition for the Seger band because somebody told Bob that he could play great B3, which he can. So he went in and got the job. So after Teagarden left, Craig goes to Bob, goes, well, why don't you, call Don Brewer? He's not doing anything. Another Michigan guy, blah, 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 So, excuse me. So they called Don. Then they start auditioning guitar players. And they auditioned lots of guitar players. Craig, who I had met through the Flint sessions, and Don, who I had already known, and then played on their record, both suggested me for an audition. Yeah. So Don called and said, hey, how would you like to come up and audition for Bob Seger? Now, right at this time, we were shopping, our manager was shopping the Rosie stuff, and Elektra Records was actually very interested in that band. And Roy Thomas Baker, we had heard, was actually interested in producing us, as was Michael Wagner. I don't know for a fact. We just were told that. Yeah. But here I have a chance now to go up and, play with a band that's already national and blah, 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 blah. So I went to the audition, got hired, that audition, came back, told the Rosie guys that I was going to go play with Bob Seger, but it wasn't going to happen for a while. So we still played, we had some dates that we were obligated to play. So we played those knowing I was going to leave. Then I get a call from the Seger people saying, well, we had to audition 2 more people. And there was one guy that we really liked. His name's Dwayne Bailey. He played really good. And how would you feel about coming up and playing rhythm instead of lead? And I said, I'm good with that. I love playing rhythm. I'm a much better rhythm guitar player than lead guitar player anyway to this day. So I go up and bam, done. We start into rehearsals. Then I get a call from Bob about a weekend. He goes, because I basically took Bob's job as rhythm guitar player, because Bob always played a lot of guitar on stage. He was the rhythm guitar player and actually played some solos like Her Strut, stuff like that. That was him. Okay. So he goes, man, I really miss playing guitar. I'm sorry, but I think we're going to go back to, me playing guitar. So I get sent back to Columbus with my tail between my legs. I have to call, I have to talk to my band and go, hey, can I come back? They're all hating me at this point, but we could go out and make some money and play some dates. So I go back and I rejoin Rosie for a couple of weeks. And I might have been closer to a month. I don't remember. And then I'm sitting at home one night and I get a call from Bill Blackwell, Bob's road manager or tour manager, still to this day, says, can you be on a flight to Roanoke, Virginia tomorrow morning? And I went, oh boy. So they want me back. So I and it's all because of one song. The hit from the hit song from the album The Distance was a song called Shame on the Moon, which is a country song written by Rodney Crowell. Mm-hmm. And it became a big crossover hit off that record on the country charts and the rock charts. Yeah. Even before Roll Me Away became a hit. So no one could play that song right except for me. And Bob couldn't play it. No one could play it. And again, they go, we got to play this song, and Chatfield can play that song. Mm-hmm. So they call me, and I go to Roanoke the next day, and I rejoin the band at that point and leave my band Rosie yet again. So that's basically how that happened.
They were pissed at you. Did they understand in any way? Or are they just pissed?
Pissed. Okay. Other than Ed Means, the other guitar player in Rosie at the time, lived with me. Yeah. And me and my girlfriend Judy, and he was understanding. Yeah. About it. And he actually and he watched, we'd get done with Rosie gigs when I knew I was going to be called, when I knew I was going for the audition. I had about a week. And they weren't talking about songs, but Craig Frost would call me every day and go, here's the songs we went through today with the other guys that are auditioning. So I kind of had a little handle on it.
Yeah.
So I learned all those songs, but the thing that got me the job was getting along with everybody. I mean, I already knew Brewer. I already knew Frost.
The hang effect.
I got along famously with Chris Campbell, the bass player, the minute we shook hands. The sax player, alto, not so much. He and I never, I mean, we were always okay, but I'm an energetic guy, and he was always the stage show in that band. And when I came in, I kind of stepped on his toes a little bit. Plus I was on his side of the stage. So he was always bitching about me taking up too much room and being too loud. But that, that's water under the bridge now. But Ed watched me come back from Rosie gigs, 3 sheets to the wind, a whole bottle of vodka in me, not to mention however much cocaine I'd done that night, pull out those records and work on those songs for the rest of the night. And I worked really hard to do it. And so he was very appreciative of it, and he was okay about it. So, but the rest of them, not too happy. So that was pretty much that for most of the lion's share of 1983. And then you would on and off for the next how many years? Well, at the end of that tour, our opening act for the first part of the tour was John Hall, the guy from Orleans that wrote "You're Still the One" and all, some other songs. Then the second half of the tour was Michael Bolton, the rock guy. So he had just the Michael Bolton album had just come out, and so he was out with us, and that was him, Bobby T. Torello on drums, Dennis St. James on bass, Rich Zito on guitar, and Bruce Kulick on guitar. So, and I played rhythm with Seger, though I would warm up in the dressing rooms in the little tuning room, and I'd play lead guitar and play my stuff. So they'd heard me play and stuff. So when our tour ended, Rick was leaving the band to go tour with Grace Slick, and they needed a guitar player. So Michael called me and said, hey, do you want to come back out with us? So I came home for like one day and then went out and finished the year with Michael Bolton, with Bruce Kulick and I on guitars.
How was Bruce?
With how he and I met.
How was he? Was he cool?
He's great. We're still best of friends.
He's like the coolest dude, because I'm a Kiss fan.
I'm a Kiss Grand Funk for like 22 years.
Right.
And he moved to Vegas a couple of years ago. So, and we've always stayed in touch. We've always were great friends. So,
that's wonderful
to this day.
So I know through your whole story, the drugs and alcohol have been a thing that you eventually overcame. We got to the point that was that you overcame it. How was that how did that affect your music making process?
I've been sober 19 and a half years now, and it's still odd because in not just in music, in all aspects of my life, because I spent from the time, were there periods in there when I would quit for a little bit or something? Yeah, there were. And there were a couple of times prior to getting sober now that I stayed sober for a year once. I tried to stay sober, did the program, blah, 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 blah. But, I would go maybe a month without using for a while. But my life was basically whatever form of alcohol I was into at the time. Vodka eventually won over because I just loved vodka. And I was, when I quit, I was into the better part of a half gallon a night instead of like a fifth. And different drugs of choice over the years, but ended up being cocaine. For many, 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 many years. So I was always, I'm a functioning alcoholic. I can do my playing job. I owned, my vintage guitar store for a long time,
which we'll talk about.
Now, did I always make the right, great decisions? No, I did not.
Yeah.
But could I function? Yes, I could.
Okay.
And I, still playing to this day is a little, it's very weird because you hear things differently.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, that's gotta be a shift.
Yeah. I mean, I still, the good thing is I still enjoy playing enough, and I can absolutely do it without the aid of drugs and alcohol. I basically have a huge inferiority complex. I always have. I probably always will. And that was probably my reason for the drinking and drugging.
Yeah.
Because it allowed me to be someone that I couldn't be, when I was sober.
Superhero.
I've gotten past that to a certain point, but I still have a big inferiority complex, and I still tend to like to sabotage things. I like to sabotage my life because I don't think I deserve something. It's not me sitting in my head going, hey, you don't deserve this. It's just a feeling that I have, or that I'm not good enough for it, or people aren't going to accept me for this and that. And the drugs and alcohol, it allows you to do that to a certain point. But then, when the cocaine really starts kicking in and stuff, it brings you right back to that point. You get real introverted and paranoid and things. I don't think that I've written a good song since I've been sober.
Okay.
That's the thing that kicks my ass the most. And I've written a few, nothing that I've ever played with anybody, but on my phone now, I used to keep a recorder around, but on my phone, I probably have 200 some odd ditties of things that I'll be playing sitting on the couch, and I'll just, hit the memo button on my phone and record licks, chord progressions that now that, I mean, part of it is, I wasn't really playing with anybody when I wasn't touring. So I really didn't have any motivation much to do that. And I'm starting to play with people around here again. Wonderful. And the motivation is there. And I'm going to have another songwriter friend of mine sit down with me and go through some of these things and go, hey, yeah, this might be something, this might not, but it's taken me a long time. I'm not sure that Seger will ever tour again. Nobody's sure. Yeah. But I need to get,
keep on.
I'm 65 years old. I don't have forever, but I still have some time.
Yes.
And in the whatever new project I get involved with here, new old project I get involved with here, I plan on hopefully writing some songs and hopefully writing some good sober songs. Not so much about sobriety, just being able to do it sober. And I've read stories where of other people, you got to think back that, some of the best songs in history were written under the influence of various drugs and alcohol.
Of course.
All Led Zeppelin songs, most of the Beatles songs.
Jimi Hendrix.
You can bring
Jimi Hendrix has celebrated Purple Haze.
It's not necessarily a real bad thing. It definitely.
But at a certain
level
point,
of inhibition.
Yeah, but at a certain point, it takes over.
It will tilt the other direction.
Yes,
absolutely, positively. I just woke up one day, and I've lost countless money, countless relationships, over the drinking, and drugging stuff. And one day in Las Vegas, I was actually ending a marriage at the time, but it had nothing really to do with that. The marriage didn't work. We parted as friends.
Yeah.
We actually used the same attorney for the divorce.
Okay.
So, but I knew it had to stop.
Yeah.
In all that time from 14 to 44, I got pulled over a couple of times, but I never got arrested for DUI. I never got in an accident. I never hurt anybody else.
That's
and
a
I figure at this point in time, I've gotten away with that for so long.
Yeah, your karma. Your karma has
anything that's going to happen to me is going to be a biblical proportion.
Yeah.
If I kill myself, that's one thing. That's my own fault. But the thought of killing or hurting someone else, when you're behind that 3,000-pound assault vehicle that you have no business driving, I would I joke that, I would have to drive with one eye closed just to see double. And that'll be in a song someday.
Yeah, it
Um,
should be. It's a
but it should be in a country song.
yeah,
But I just decided enough was enough, and I stopped.
yeah.
I drank my last full glass of vodka at a bar called Favorites, and that I used to frequent in Las Vegas, where I'd sit and play video poker and drink full glasses of vodka all night long.
Okay.
And I drank my last full glass of vodka, closed one eye, drove home, and never turned back, and stopped.
That's wonderful.
And
You're still here.
it. So
That couldn't have lasted forever. You're still here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't, you can't dance with the devil forever.
So Cowtown Guitars.
Yeah.
See that well briefly how I started hearing about you was okay, obviously you were from the Godz and everybody, and that has set the stage for so many other bands. But Cowtown Guitars was like a institution within Ohio before it moved to Las Vegas. So
Mhm.
how did that start?
I have bought and sold and traded guitars since I was about 16 years old. I could never hold on to one guitar. I'd always be trading something and, blah, 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 blah. And I told you earlier about my infatuation with equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love guitars and amplifiers and everything that goes with them. I don't know why. It's just me. It's like some guys like shotguns or whatever, or golf clubs. I have it with guitars. Again, after the Seger thing and various incarnations of Rosie and the Godz, I found myself with no money.
Yeah.
Again, so I started working at a music store in Columbus called Columbus Music Center, which was an offshoot of Akron Music Center out of Akron. So, I was playing in bands. I was playing in various versions of Rosie at that point and various versions of the Godz at that point during the Columbus music years. But those were, that was some serious heavy drug and alcohol time, seriously heavy. I even moved to Los Angeles for a short period of time with the Godz at that point. Eric, myself, Kevin Valentine, who already lived there in JoJo Weekend. We moved to Los Angeles actually to try to get a record deal. It was right after Freddie Salem was in the band for a while, and he had left, and we replaced him with JoJo. And we were out there playing showcases at Gazzari's and stuff, trying to get a record deal. Played Gazzari's, the Country Club, all the usual whiskey, the usual haunts out there. That's when you either looked like Poison or you looked like Guns N' Roses. That was that era.
Yeah.
And we didn't really look like either of them, or maybe an old version of Guns N' Roses. Right. So, it was a young man's game out there at that point. Not that we were ancient, but we were way older than them.
Yeah.
And so that we, didn't get a record deal. So I'd kept the job there, so I had insurance. And so after one of the jaunts out there, I came back, and the Columbus music thing just wasn't happening. The store wasn't happening and stuff. And I knew a guy that owned a bar and said, "Hey, give me $10,000 and I'll turn it into $20,000. And he goes, "Okay." So I did. And I was just going to do it as a hobby with his backing. And then I went, I started thinking about it and going, this would be a lot better if we had a store. I wouldn't have to go all over the place looking for stuff. And so I ended up opening up Cowtown Guitars, and keeping it in Columbus. Once again, still playing in various versions of the Godz at that point. And I kept it in Columbus until I got called. The Seger people called me to go back out on tour in 1996. So I went out and did the 96 tour with them, came back, had met somebody in Las Vegas and decided to move the store to Las Vegas
Okay.
and move to Las Vegas, relocate there. That's the real short version of that.
Yeah. So the real, from those who I've interviewed, that's where they got to meet the real you. When I say that, you've done really cool things, like been supportive of your local scene. When a lot of people, in other words, nobody said a bad thing about you, which is kind of rare.
Especially in the, especially
what you're telling me is,
well, once again, people knew me drunk,
yeah,
and and geeked up, and that was me. That was a happy me.
yeah.
But we were all that way.
I was gonna say,
We were.
I know that we're
Not everybody, but 90% of the people we hung with, and we all hung together. It was a big, it was all musicians. We'd all congregate at the same places. We all congregate at Chi-Chi's or that place that was up at the Continent that we used to all go to, Slapsy Maxie's.
okay.
Tuesday night at Slapsy Maxie's, you can't walk in the place, and everybody's drunk as hell and all coked up and just having a good old time. That's just the way we were back then. And I never, I'm not everybody's favorite person, believe me.
Yeah.
And even with the store, there are people that I did not get along with. There's still people in this business I don't get along with, and I'm sure they feel the same way about me. You can't love everybody, and everybody can't love you.
Yeah.
And but I've always tried to stay above board, with most everything. And
well, you would get equipment for people who they lost all their equipment, and you make it possible for them to keep their dream alive.
Well, yeah,
and these kinds of things
try to do that
over and over again.
If somebody needs something, yeah. I mean, it's funny. Ed Means sums it up pretty well, because I've been known to be hard to get along with in a band situation, and sometimes I'm wrong, but sometimes I'm one of those guys that if we're practicing, you come in prepared. You practice at home, you rehearse with the band. You come in, you don't learn your songs, don't be learning your songs on our time. Learn them at home, come in, know them, let's do it. So, when people aren't pulling their weight or whatever, I can be a real dick. But and Ed's told me many times he's had to, well, I've heard Chatfield is this or Chatfield is that. He goes, the guy just likes he just likes everything right. But man, if you need something, he'll give you the farm.
Yeah.
And that's just, people have been that way with me.
Mm-hmm.
People have shot me. People have given me a lot of slack over the years, given me opportunities that I may or may not should have had. And it's just the way I am.
Yeah.
Can I be a selfish prick? Yeah. Ask any of my ex-wives or my current one for that, for that matter. We all have our little dark sides here,
of course,
but
you keep yourself in check.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as, have there been times when I've been in competition with some local people around here, music wise? Yeah, especially early Rosie, when everybody's vying for the top spot.
Yeah.
The Godz not so much, because I was young. I didn't care about the other bands. I loved all the other bands around here. But then when we started getting big, and there were bands obviously that could play better than us and things like that, they start getting a little snooty. Well, these guys got handed everything. Well, no, we didn't. We busted our ass as much or more than anybody. We were, here's a true Godz story. One of the few. We were broke. If it wasn't for various people coming in and giving us food and money and stuff or whatever, we didn't have a pot to piss in, pretty much. At the end of the week, we would drink so much at the bar tab would be over what we got paid. So we'd actually owe money. But we actually, on Summit Street, Eric was a pretty avid hunter and, gun guy. We shot city squirrels in the backyard for food, and he would skin the squirrels and we would fry them for food.
That's hardcore.
That's how bad it got at certain points.
Okay.
We have paid our dues many, many, many times. I'm still paying them.
Yeah.
What
are you doing now?
I'm sorry.
What's the future? What are you doing now?
Well, we did the Rosie thing. We were talking about doing it again in the summer because it was super successful and we had a really, really good time. And we never, it's my dog. She gets upset when I'm talking to somebody too long. That's not her. Molly, stop. No. So anyway, we're talking about doing a summer date, which we've never done. We always play during the winter next to a holiday. It'd be nice to do something when it's warm.
Yeah.
And I just filled in with a band called Gary Sunshine and the Wonderful Disappointments for my friend Andy Harrison. He's the regular guitar player, but Gary's an all original guy. We play a couple of covers, but he has a boatload of originals. And it's kind of a cross between Lou Reed and Lucinda Williams.
All right. Wonderful.
His stuff is really good. And I had a really good time doing it. May I do that again? I don't know. He doesn't play out that often. We just moved into a new house, so that's been taking up a lot of time, getting things situated and getting.
You're back in Columbus.
Back in Columbus.
Yes.
I start rehearsing next Thursday night with a project that we started in 2019, right before COVID hit.
All right.
And I can't really tell you what it is. I can, but I don't want to say anything in case it doesn't work.
Don't jinx it. We'll do a round two.
Let's just say people are going to be familiar with it.
Okay. Wonderful.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of stuff with there's a drummer here in town named Keith Pickens.
Okay.
And I first met him when I was doing a little stint with the Boys from Nowhere here. And then he and I still play on sessions and live sometimes with this guy named Mick Divins, who had the Boys from Nowhere. And we still, I played on his new demo stuff. And I've done a couple of live dates when I was still living in Las Vegas. I'd fly here and play live with him.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on a project with Keith. And we'll see after next Thursday, how this is going to go. And then I'll call you and tell you.
Alrighty. Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. This has been enlightening for everybody, myself, and obviously you filled in a lot of stuff. So thank you. We Love Guitar Nerds podcast, Mark Chatfield. You also are still kind of selling guitars?
Yeah. I have a hobby business now. It's called Trademark Guitars. I sold Cowtown back in 2011 and kind of just did it as a hobby, and it's still just a hobby. I have no desire to open up a retail location, and I probably keep as much of the stuff that I buy as I resell the stuff that I buy.
I'd love to see your collection someday.
Well, yeah, it's always been a mask for my own collection. All of it has.
Right.
I still do it because I know how to do it, and it's fun, and it's a lot more fun when you don't have the overhead of a store,
right?
Or the responsibility.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll always keep my fingers in that. Yeah.
Alrighty. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.